Welcome to Studio 58A Live here at the Jamaica Information Service, our discussion program coming to you live on Facebook. I am your host, Vaughn Davis. Thank you to everyone joining us online wherever you are. We really do appreciate it. And as you watch, remember to send in your questions and comments so we can put them to our guests. And like how we have your attention, just do us a favor now. Share this video with a friend or 2 or 500 so we can have a real lively discussion. Now, the goal of the government's Vision 2030 National Development Plan is to make Jamaica the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. One of the key components being undertaken to achieve this is channeling various kinds of support to our vulnerable and at-risk communities. Now, it's all well and good to want to help, but helping is not as easy as it sounds. There are issues such as effectively utilizing resources, avoiding performing the same activities in the same communities, raising funds to support the support programs, and the list goes on. To help individuals and groups overcome some of the challenges, the government, through the Planning Institute of Jamaica, PIOJ, and several partners, is staging the 3rd edition of the Symposium of Best Practices in Social and Community Development. Here to tell us more about the symposium today are Program Director for the Planning Institute of Jamaica's Community Renewal Program, Mr. Charles Clayton, and Project Manager, Social Development and Monitoring and Evaluation at the Jamaica Social Investment Fund, Rhian Holder. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining us. Now, Mr. Clayton, I'm going to start with you. Can you give me a little background? Talk to me about the symposium itself and why the PIOJ decided to get into this kind of measure.
I'll start the other way around with a little background on the Community Renewal Program.
Okay, sure.
In your introduction, you mentioned the fact that there was a lack of collaboration at the community level and so on. After the events of 2010, when you had this social uprising around West Kingston, the government decided that it needed a program that would address the issues that gave rise to what happened in West Kingston.
Right.
And so they came to the PIOJ and asked us if we could design a program that would address the concerns in West Kingston. Well, we did our research and said that we didn't need a program to address West Kingston. We needed a program to address the wider issues in the wider Jamaica. And we did some research, and among the things that came out was the fact that although much was being done by individual agencies, and in fact individuals had benefited from those programs and projects, and communities that indeed benefited, there was no meaningful change in the character of most of these communities that were being intervened in. And the primary factor was that all the issues that needed to be addressed were not being addressed because no agency has the capacity to do that. So we said what was needed was a more collaborative approach where multiple agencies could work together to address the multiple needs of communities, and working together in this common space and in a collaborative way, they would be able to overcome the overlaps that they do from time to time, and then to see if they could find a more sustainable way of changing communities. So this gave rise to the Community Renewal Program, which is not itself another implementing entity, but really a mechanism for coordinating activities at the community level. So we have developed a framework for coordination, which includes a monitoring and evaluation framework with indicators and targets, and a number of thematic areas that we think should be the focus of agency intervention. And those thematic areas: number 6, social transformation, socioeconomic development, physical transformation, youth development, governance, and of course safety and justice. We said if we paid attention to these thematic areas, working together, using our particular areas of emphasis as agencies, then would be better able to resolve community issues more holistically. So what we have tried to do then is to try to see how we can bring the agencies together. One of the things that happened is that when our program came into being, many agencies had already engaged on the ground. So they couldn't easily retrofit to fit the framework of the CRP. But what many have done, such as JSIF, JSIF has focused through the EU Poverty Reduction Program on 40 of the 100 communities that are targeted under the Community Renewal Program. These 100 communities were selected on the basis of vulnerability and volatility in the 5 parishes that had over time sustained the highest rates of murder. These parishes are Kingston and St. Andrew, St. Catherine, Clarendon, and St. James. And so JSIF already began through the Poverty Reduction Program to focus on 40 of those, and that there are plans now to go beyond the 40, which Rhian will tell you more about later on.
We get to that shortly,
Yeah, but so now on that background, we used the STC's interagency network as a coordinating mechanism to pull the different agencies to work together. And through our various collaborations on the ground, we recognized that we needed another forum for sharing information, that everyone could see the best practices that are happening, not only among ourselves, but globally. And so out of that was born the Best Practice Symposium. And so that started 3 years ago. This is the third iteration.
Let's just to be clear and specify, where and when will the symposium be held this year?
This year it is at the Jamaica Conference Center, and it's on the 14th of November, just a few days from now. However, attendance there has to be limited because we only have limited space.
Okay.
So what we really want people to do, who are not among those who are able to be accommodated there, is to go online and pick up the live streams from a number of places.
We're going to get to that, Charlie, but I mean, as it on the subject of, I guess, registration and so on, is registration still open? Can people still find a way to get there, or are you booked at that point and it's more about just watching the live stream now?
Whoever's coming has already been decided already.
All right, so that is pretty much. So they're saying, ladies and gentlemen, look out for the links and so on, so you can watch the live stream, and they'll share all that information as we go along, because we definitely want you to tune in, because I can just imagine there are many persons, individuals out there, church groups, community groups, who have the best intentions for different communities and want to find the best thing, best way to help.
And we want them to be a part of it.
Now, Ms. Holder, JSIF, I want to ask you how JSIF got on board. JSIF is one of those agencies I have a particularly strong amount of respect for because of the work that they do. It's really doing a very good job in terms of helping communities to raise up their infrastructure and so on. So what made JSIF decide to get on board with this program?
Well, when we came on board last year, it was the culmination of JSIF's 20th anniversary celebrations. We've been in operation for 20 years. We started as a project and we're still around. So I think that is a great endorsement of the fact that we're doing good things, that we have learned several best practices over the years. One of our guiding principles is knowledge transfer. And partnership has also been always a very critical element of JSIF's activities and the way that we operate. And so for us, this symposium was a perfect way to really encapsulate all of those things and to really help us to share what we have learned that works well in communities, and also to learn from others who have been working in the same spaces.
All right, so I kind of want to just check the boxes in terms of the details and so on, the who, what, when, why, where, and how for the symposium, because I want to get into some more other questions in terms of, so you guys can share some examples of these best practices and so on. So to begin with, talk to me about some of the persons. Well, this symposium is being observed under the theme operationalizing best practices at the policy, program, and community levels. All right, so talk to me about that theme itself and how will it be reflected in the content of the course itself, Mr. Clayton.
Well, the theme, policy, program, and community, is recognizing that there's a triangular relationship between those themes. You know, the research cycle, you gather information, you design programs, you implement, and the implementation, you go back into contribute to the next research cycle, and it comes around. So policy is developed. Policy leads to the development of programs, and these programs affect communities, but communities themselves feedback information that tells us what the policy loop should be directed out towards. So it's a circular relationship. So we want this to be recognized, that you can't develop policy without consulting with the beneficiaries. And policy should always be responsive to that. Program design should be responsible. And
because I'm sure many people feel like there's a disconnect a lot of the time between people just come through and force a policy down their throats.
But if you don't know where you're going, why you're doing it, then you're going nowhere fast.
Right. And in terms of the best way to do it, obviously you have to speak with the persons who are most affected.
Absolutely.
And who are most going to hopefully benefit from intervention.
So we are emphasizing this interrelationship between program design, policy development and implementation, and the beneficiaries.
Because I mean, a lot of the time people they want to help and they see the end goal inside without realizing just how much legwork and I guess book and pen work that has to go into really targeting and structuring your program so that it's effective. So it actually achieves its objectives. So I want you to just reinforce, because a lot of the time a person might, but we're just going to feed some poor people down the street, down the road, you know what I mean? Talk to people about the importance of ensuring that they understand just how much effort and energy it really takes to plan and organize and execute a program like that. Anyone you can take that one.
Well, I think, as you said, there's nothing wrong with doing a feeding program. I think that is critical. Obviously, if it's an immediate need, then you address that. But if you're looking at making a long-term change, you have to look at what are the actual causes of the problem in the first place, right? And then how best working with the resources that you have and the other entities that are on the field, in the communities, that you can make the kind of change that you want to see at the end of the day. And as you said, it can't be something that's done in a vacuum. You have to have that input from multiple stakeholders. So this sort of symposium is one way where we can bring back that emphasis on the fact that we may have a policy regarding resettlement or climate change and that kind of thing, but how do you bring that down to the actual reality on the ground that people are facing? How do we make that real to persons, because they're dealing with the effects of those things, right? But how do we do this in a responsive and responsible way? And that's what the symposium is helping us to bring out, that concretizing policy, programs, and community.
So let's, go ahead. Before I
want to show the interrelationship between the different types of activities. They don't, as Rhian said, they don't happen in a vacuum. And they have a bigger purpose. It's not just feeding somebody, but to what end? The ultimate goal can't be that you're going to be feeding somebody for the rest of their lives.
Right.
People respect themselves, and there's no greater empowerment than for people to feel that they have agency over themselves and that they're able to do things for themselves. It brings self-respect. Everybody wants to be there, and the people in the inner city often cry out for respect. People fight and kill each other because they don't feel respected. Well, the greatest way to bring respect is to make them capable of doing for themselves. So we don't have sustainable change if every year somebody has to come in there and feed somebody or to build a house for them. So what we look for by working together is that things come together in such a way that people are empowered to do, and the community is transformed into a self-sustained microcosm of this society.
So let's get specific. Who exactly do you want tuning in on the stream, tuning in and paying attention? Who are the groups that you want to reach with the symposium specifically? You know what I mean?
At the widest level, every Jamaican should have an interest in this, because we all have a role to play at some point. We are under the umbrella of Vision 2030 Jamaica, which is something that is supposed to provide a framework for all of us to work under towards our vision. And if Jamaica is to be a place where we can live, work, raise families, and do business, that we don't feel that we have to go somewhere else for that, then it means that all the things that make us fearful of living here or make us uncomfortable should be addressed. So even if I never have reason to go into one of these inner city areas, what happens down there affects me, because if it breeds criminality or if it leads to people on the road begging, then it's going to affect me at some other point. So even from my own selfish perspective, I have an interest in that. So I would say that everyone should have an interest in this. The community members, implementing entities, any Jamaican who has an interest in Jamaica should have an interest in that, because it can tell you something that can tell you better how to contribute to the entire process.
All right. I want to get even more specific. I know as a Jamaican, I definitely, should be paying attention, but, I'm competing with Facebook and Instagram and all those things. Who, like church groups, charity groups, are more persons like that? Who specifically want to pay attention to?
The persons that we want are people who are doing work in our communities. It's not just inner city communities, though that is the focus of the CRP. Right. It's any community. If you're working in a community, you're working with people, and therefore you have to have certain roles and responsibilities. And the best ways of interacting and the best programs that have been out there, that's some of the things that we're going to be talking about at the symposium. What works, and the lessons that various entities have learned over time.
So you could say the primary targets are entities, people who are involved in community development work. That's a primary target.
So youth clubs, church groups, the kinds of groups that you mentioned.
All of them.
All of them.
All right. So which brings me to my next question, which is, who are some of the guests you will have speaking and addressing the attendees and so on? Who are the persons going to be sharing out their information and giving us some of the best practices?
Well, at the highest level of government, we have two senior government ministers. The Minister of National Security, he's going to be the keynote speaker. But we'll also have Minister Royal Reid.
Education, youth and information.
Participating in a particular section that deals with that. We'll have specialists like social anthropologist Herbert Gale, who is well known for his work among especially boys, but certainly in inner city communities. We will have people like Mr. Ron Blake, representing the Clarendon Municipal Corporation. Damian Young is somebody who has done some very unique and very successful projects in community development and business development in Clarendon, and his experience is going to be shared. So we'll have a range of people on the ground, people at the highest level of policy, people who are experts in the field like Robert Gale, and we'll have others, KCR Carr from the Parenting Commission, others like that who will represent in special areas of community work.
Okay. All right. So let's get into it. So what have you learned? This is the third staging. So naturally we would have progressed to a stage where we have already laid down and established certain techniques and best practices that already exist. Can you share share with members of the public who might just be, planning on starting a charity, might just be planning on doing something? Give us like some do's and don'ts, some top 10 tips, or things that you've just, based on each of your individual experiences, what you can say works and, what doesn't work.
I talk to Rhian first, whose agencies on the ground.
All right.
Have something to say.
Sure. Okay. Go ahead, Rhian.
Well, I think one of the main things, as I mentioned before, is the whole issue of effective participation. You can't be deciding what to do for persons without having spoken with them. So if you're going to be working with a community group or in a community, you need to be there. You need to be speaking to the persons directly affected. So that's the very first thing. And it's not coming in as a savior.
Right,
persons already know what
right.
works and what doesn't work for them, what their specific context requires. And so that is it, the whole element of really listening and working together on whatever intervention it is that you're planning to do. That is critical. I can give you one of the JSIF best practices.
Sure,
one
definitely.
of the things that we started very long time ago was the whole community-based contracting, which a lot of times persons say, these entities come into communities and it's outside persons who are going to benefit really because it's the outside contractors, et cetera, who are coming in to do the work. One of the things in terms of empowering communities in their own growth and development is that we work with community-based organizations, so youth clubs, the community development committees and so forth. We train them in how to do project management, and they actually are the ones who procure and do the project themselves. So obviously these would be a little less complex. Might be zinc fence removal and replacement. It might be, something along those lines, summer camps and so others that they are able to do. They learn the skills, they manage the funds, they often bring it in at under budget. We've never had any major issues in terms of, misuse of funds and so forth, because we do supervise. We do provide that technical support in making sure that everything is done properly. So at the end of the day, the community group has managed to do the project. The community has benefited. They have learned some skills, and many times they're able to go on and do bigger and better things for their communities because now they have that experience and exposure.
All right. Add something, Mr. Clayton. What do you have to add to that?
Segue from that, Rhian just mentioned the fact that they work to empower the community members and to allow them to be participants in the process of developing whatever they're receiving. And segueing from that is also the idea that you don't do program design without consulting the community. So they must have a say and must have the belief that what is happening now is what they want for themselves. But if you impose your particular interventions on them, then you might be able to finish it, but at the end of the day it stays there, it gets no further. So you build a building and they never ask for it. It's a white elephant.
Right.
Or you give them training in something that they've asked for. Okay, they have been trained, but nothing happens from it. They just stay there. So the other element coming from that is that program design must involve the inputs of the committee members, and that consultation must lead to the belief that what is happening is what they really want for themselves. The other thing is that the interagency approach, where you collaborate together, is a much more effective way of doing community work. Working in silos doesn't bring about the kind of results you want, and you sometimes step on each other's toes.
But I want to touch on that question, because you find out at the time that there's always a reluctance to kind of make those kind of partnerships. Why do you think that is? We both want to, for example, offer some skills training, but yet we both want to do it in our own individual specific ways, and somehow we reduplicate efforts and waste money, waste time, waste resources, etc.
Agencies are accountable to their sponsors, and they have to explain how the money is spent, so they want visibility. If they are not seen, their sponsors can't see what they're doing. So one of the reasons why they want to work in spaces where they can be seen is that they have to account to their sponsors. That's part of the thing, so to maintain an identity. However, what the framework of the CRP provides is a way of keeping your identity and yet being able to account for your activity. So when you work together and then you can see your activity is contributing to a particular goal or outcome, and you can see that your input has had a measurable impact on the outcome, then that will help encourage agencies to work together, because they can then extract the impact of their inputs and be able to account to their sponsors for what they have done. So this, the monitoring and evaluation framework is just now being developed. It is not fully implemented because we are collecting data. We are working on the protocols by which agencies can share information that can contribute to this monitoring and evaluation system. And when it is fully implemented, agencies can download their particular outputs, aggregate the outcomes, and see what they have done. But they'll also be able to see at the highest level how their incomes have contributed in the ladder up to the final vision that we have for our community or our country.
All right. Now, Rhian, I want to ask you about fundraising. I know one of the things that JSIF does is that they, even as much as they might come in and provide a certain amount of funding, they always require communities to raise some amount of the money themselves. But there are many communities or many persons who might tell you that raising funds is probably one of the single most difficult things to do when you're trying to help people.
Right. Okay.
So what are some of the best practices that you can share on that subject, raising funds and helping people to, stay active, stay alive even, because it is a matter of life and death when you try to talk about money and raising enough money to support whatever initiative you have.
Right. Well, the first thing I should mention is that with JSIF, we do require community contribution for most of our projects, but it's not necessarily financial, not necessarily in money. Right? Cool. People's time is quantified. So if you're spending a lot of your time every month coming to project-related meetings, you're making project-related phone calls as a part of the youth club or something like that, those kinds of things can be quantified. The venue that the community might provide as space to hold meetings or to store materials, security that they provide for materials. We've had communities where nothing goes missing because the community is providing the security, right, that kind of thing. That is all quantified. And so that would count as contribution. I think when persons are fundraising in general, one of the things is to take note of some of those kinds of things, because somebody may not be able to provide money to you in cash, but they might be able to sponsor you a couple cases of water. They might be able to provide you some time, from some specialist person to come and do your accounting or to work out a business plan for you, something like that. So there's lots of different ways that you can look at what it is that you want to achieve that doesn't necessarily ask for money. It could be some other element of it.
Mr. Clayton, you mentioned the community renewal program and the framework that it provides. I think it would be useful for persons to be able to see if this is a document that persons can go and look at and try to maybe see how whatever they're doing might align with that. So if I just started my charitable organization last week, whatever, and I hear this now, and how can I see it and find out how I can tailor my operations or make them, streamline them with yours and the overall objectives of that itself? Where can I go and find out more?
So we have documentation that we can share electronically. We are in the process now of setting up the page where they can go and pick up the documents. We are a little behind with that, but eventually that will be up there where they can go, see the documents, download what they want, to see what they want. But in the meantime, they can contact us at PIOJ, and we will be able to send them the documentation that they need. When all the Facebook or the different mechanisms for sharing online are up and running, we'll let everybody know.
Okay.
We're pretty close to that right now,
All right. So we're here, ladies and gentlemen, discussing the symposium for the best practices on community renewal. And Symposium of Best Practices in Social and Community Development. We're here with Mr. Charles Clayton and Rhian Holder, and we're inviting your questions and your comments so we can get more information. Those of you who might be running a charity or might be involved in some way or lending a helping hand, this might be the time you can ask them and get some information, get feedback to maybe help your operations improve and that kind of thing. We see online, Sonia Atkinson is telling us hello. Thank you. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you for watching. We really do appreciate it. Now, back to you guys here. Now, question I have here, is there a plan to map the activities across communities so that each entity knows what is happening in the community for family service programs, employment initiatives, safety and security initiatives, health initiatives, and infrastructure projects?
That is one of the things that we do in the CRP.
Right.
So we have 100 communities across the island, and we don't have the capacity to be able to produce for all of them at the same time. We have relied on agencies such as the Social Development Commission, which have been over the years building community profiles. But beyond that, what we have done at the moment is prioritize among the priorities. So there are 6 priority communities in St. James, 5 in Clarendon, 4 in Kingston, and we have to prioritize in St. Catherine. This may be expanded as resources become available. And what we have done for those prioritized now, we have developed matrices of interventions that shows exactly who is doing what where, what has been done in the past, what is planned to be done at the moment. And we have also, along with the communities, the agencies, some of the political representatives, and so on, come together to develop an action plan which takes into consideration what is already being done, and we are doing the gap analysis to see, apart from what is planned and what is being done, what needs to be done to complete this action plan. So we have done this for the communities that we have prioritized so far. So those matrices are available for people to see. And of course, as far as possible, we have collected SDC profiles, which can also help for the other communities that we're not yet prioritizing among the 100 priority communities.
So you can go and check and see how, if what's the range of projects and where yours might be a duplication, for example. It might need to go to somewhere else and make it more effective.
Agency network, all the agencies participating are able to share what they're doing where, so we can know whether to advise an agency that, look, this may not be needed here because they're doing that there. So through the interagency network that we are using to coordinate the activities.
Right, now I'm going to give each of you an opportunity to just talk up the conference or the symposium rather, and let persons know why an event such as this is really worthwhile to those of us out there who have a heart for helping to lend a hand to redevelop Jamaica and you know, solve some of the problems that have been plaguing us for such a long time. I'll start with you, Rhian.
I think, as we mentioned, one of the best ways of learning is by attending something like this. And by attending, we also mean obviously by the live stream, where persons are able to hear what has happened and what has worked well, and are also to share from their own perspectives what they have been able to do to benefit communities.
All right, your turn.
If you learn only from yourself, you won't know very much.
That's true. That's definitely true.
The only way to learn is to hear what other people are doing. None of us is a repository of all the information, even the smartest person in the world. And no library has all the information in the world. So when you begin to hear what others are doing, it opens up your mind, it broadens your perspective, and it helps you to create more. That you come out of your comfort zone, you come out of your boxes, and you find that there's a big old world. You would have been listening to Dalton Harrison.
Yeah, exactly.
And one of the things he said, life on Mars, is there another place other than Jamaica? Is there more out there? And that's a question every one of us who's implementing must ask. Is there another way of doing things? Are people doing things better than I'm doing it? How can I be more effective? And the only way to know is to hear from others, to explore.
Let's take the time to big up Miss Charmaine Marie Brim, saying, hi, Charles and Rhian, representing PIOJ and JSIF, good information sharing. So they're bigging you up online for your efforts.
Thank you.
All right, so where can people, do you know where where can people check the live stream? Where can they get the information
Well, we're
from?
going to get the link the very morning of the event, and that will be on all of the partners' social media pages. I can tell you for JSIF, we're going to be on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and our handle is at JSIFJA.
All right, that's at JSIFJA, people. So you can tune in at that time. Go ahead, Mr.
Alternative, my JPS Online, LPD_JA, Local Development Partners. This is for, and I should mention the partners, Jamaica Social Investment Fund, the Citizen Security and Justice Program, CSJP, Jamaica Public Service, the National Housing Trust, NHT, the Social Development Commission, and last but by no means least, the United States Agency for International Development through their FHI 360 program, Local Development Partner Development. So these are the primary partners. Along with ourselves, Community Renewal Program from Planning Institute of Jamaica, and each of us has a site. So I mentioned my JPS Online, LPD_JA for the FHI 360 USAID program. JSIF mentioned theirs. And of course, there's the SDC, Social Development Commission, SDC, and Vision 2030 Jamaica. These are all areas where you can.
All right. Now, I'm also reliably informed that it will be on some of RJR's platforms as well. All right, so people can go. There are many platforms for you to go on and have a look, so you can tune in and find out ways to help and hopefully underscore some of the efforts you doing. Maybe you're in a church group, maybe you're in a community group, maybe you're in just a group of people who gathered one afternoon over drinks and decided we want to lend a helping hand. You know what I mean? You never know. And as he said, you'll never learn everything if you only listen to yourself or just the people you know. It's good to expose yourself to different ways of thinking, different philosophies, so that hopefully they can inform your efforts and make things better. That's the idea. All right. So, and use the hashtag Best Practices Symposium 2018. So you can go when you're posting and watching and so on. Hopefully you can share some of your own examples as well, so that they can underscore the efforts. So I'm going to leave the last word to both of you once again, just to implore persons to come out, lend their support. Well, not so much come out, but tune in online so that they can watch and participate rather. Definitely. And then get the information that they need. Go ahead, for me, both of you.
So you've said what you need to say. That is, you need to come on the 14th. You need to stream in, or what is log in, whatever. Not all that smart to do, but you need to come on board. You need to find out what is happening down there. You need to listen, and after the symposium, don't stop there. Find out how you can get involved and how you can be able to help in the community development work that is happening around you, to make Jamaica the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business.
All right.
Okay. Yes, and I think Charles summed it up beautifully there, but I would just again implore everyone to please just come out onto our social media platforms, share your thoughts, share your views, send questions, and follow us on social media, because that way you'll always be aware of what is going on in the development field in Jamaica.
All right, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about the Symposium of Best Practices in Social and Community Development that's taking place at the Jamaica Conference Center on the 14th of November. That's where they're going to share all the ideas that they have about helping Jamaica to uplift itself, uplift some of our more vulnerable citizens and communities and so on, and play our part in achieving the Vision 2030 development goal. I really implore you to tune in, take advantage of the information, and play your part. And it's time for us to wrap. Thank you to everyone who tuned into our discussion, who sent in questions and comments. Sonia Atkinson and Charmaine Brim, really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much. And we will be going through them afterwards. So if you decide to watch and leave a question after you watch things, after this interview goes up live on our Facebook page, don't worry, we'll go through and maybe we can answer your questions and channel you to either of our guests so they can answer any other concerns that you have. Now, remember, our audience plays a major part in our show. So if there's anyone you'd like to have in studio, just let us know, and we'll try our best to have that person in studio as soon as possible. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, on Twitter at Jamaica Information Service, Instagram as well, to see who will be in studio next. We do this every Thursday live on Facebook. I have been your host, Vaughn Davis, and this has been Studio 58A Live. Thank you again for joining us, and please have a wonderful day.